And welcome into another edition of Shooting the Breeze. My name is Tim Mulhelt, and as always, I'm joined by Samir Kumar. And Samir, we have kind of another special edition episode, and I say that because this is your baby, this is your son, this is the Brooklyn Nets are I don't think there's anyone in this world that I know that is a bigger Nets fan or has a bigger connection to the team than you do. And of course, this past weekend, the major news was that head coach Kenny Atkinson parts ways with the team on "quote unquote" a mutual agreement, which is obviously interesting to say the least, given the timing. Playoffs are not here quite yet, but the Nets are in the seventh spot. So, all of that to say, we've been on this show. We've talked about the perks of and the things that Kenny Atkinson brings to a team and what he does well as a head coach. He's worked with this team for a number of years. He's built them up. He's built their players up. What sense does this make? Because help me understand. I personally have a tough time understanding why you would get rid of a good thing. I know the Nets aren't perfect this year, but we all have talked about it. Kyrie and KD are on the way. Kyrie, of course, being out for the season, and he'll be back. What does this move mean? Is it something that took you by surprise?
Absolutely, it did take me by surprise. The Nets just came off a big win against the Spurs the night before. I literally wake up and I see on my phone breaking Nets and Kenny Atkinson part ways. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? The Nets have been rolling lately. They had a big win against Boston. Caris LeVert had 3 free throws to tie the game up to send it to overtime with 0.2 seconds. They got blitzed by the Memphis Grizzlies the night after. So I think there's obviously some unsettled arguments within the locker room there. Of course, Kenny Atkinson, given his fiery personality, didn't take too kindly to that effort and to the end result of that game. So maybe there were some issues that kind of just spilled over, because according to various reports I've just been seeing the last couple of days, the decision to get rid of Kenny Atkinson was made on Friday, and Kenny Atkinson wanted out just as much, if not more, than the Brooklyn Nets wanted him out. And it makes sense in a way. I'll kind of touch up on that later. But my absolute initial reaction was like, no fucking way. How? This has everything to do with KD and Kyrie. You have to connect the dots. And
right. And that brings a good point about is a lot of people are speculating that KD and Kyrie have kind of done what a lot of superstars do when they come to a team via free agency or via trade. But obviously in this case, free agency for both of them, in that they kind of are moving their chess pieces and now have decided that they're gonna obviously have a huge say in what this organization does moving forward,
as they are because of 2 superstar players.
Exactly.
And they signed with this organization because they liked what they saw, but now when you come into an organization and you want to see a championship being won, certain moves are gonna have to be made. Right. But my initial reaction obviously had to do a lot with Kyrie and KD. They were the main culprits. But just kind of looking at what Kenny Atkinson meant to this organization, this turnaround from the whole Boston trade in 2013. For any new listeners out there, for anyone who's unfamiliar, the Brooklyn Nets, after their first season in Brooklyn, acquired Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, kind of past their primes, and trade away 3 first-round picks in the deal. And, that set the organization back a few years. And clearly they had none of their first-round picks that would have been in the top 5. So they lost games without reaping the benefits of having any star players. So Kenny Atkinson coming in really, helped turn that around.
Well, and my question is this, Shamir: if this is indeed the will of Kyrie and KD, what one is a coach that can fit their standard? And I know they went with an interim. Was it Jacques Vaughn? Is that how you say his first name? Jacques Vaughn. So, he's going to finish out the year, but you would imagine that going into the offseason, KD and Kyrie are going to get their say as to who comes in. One, who is a candidate. And 2, what are they going to have to do Is it just let KD, Kyrie set the tone, set the system, set the game plan, or is there going to be some give and take here with two of the league's bigger superstars?
I mean, Kyrie and KD are gonna have to sign off on this new coach because they are the superstars. They have rings and they have the pedigree that at least 90% of the NBA doesn't currently have. So, you know, if they're gonna come to your team, you kind of have to cater to them. That's just how it goes. The NBA is a players' league, and Kenny Atkinson, his time just kind of ran out in Brooklyn. You know, he came in with a mindset of developing players and building it from the ground up. And that was all well and good and everything when we were set back because of that Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce trade. But now it's time for the next step to happen where you hire a head coach that can work with these two-star players. And some candidates that come to mind, somebody who can help take this team to the next level and help them reach a championship. Greg Popovich, that's kind of a pipe dream at the moment, but there are dots that are connecting to Popovich, as you guys are all too familiar with. Greg Popovich, coach Team USA, has a strong relationship with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. So the Nets do have Spurs hierarchy within their organization. A lot of them do come from the Spurs tree. Jacques Vaughn himself won a championship with the Spurs as a player in 2007, ironically, a year after his time with the New Jersey Nets of that time. And Sean Marks, their GM, he spent many years assisting Greg Popovich and the rest of the organization as a assistant GM. So he kind of got some of the Spurs, roots kind of in him, and he helped bring that over to the organization. So their ties run deep, and the Spurs are a team that is kind of on a rebuild. They're not really going to go anywhere at any point in terms of winning a championship. So I think Greg Popovich being 71, he might want a new challenge at this point of his career and leading Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant and the Brooklyn Nets as an organization. Kyrie and KD have rings, but the Brooklyn Nets don't have an NBA ring. So maybe he'll take up that challenge with the new roster, kind of play it out with Kyrie and KD's tenure here, and then maybe one day they all go out together. That could happen, but also on a more realistic options. I would say right now, even Adrian Wojnarowski, more simply referred to as Woj, has it wasn't a Woj as of yet, but today I was watching the Lakers-Clippers game. He said in the pregame show that the Nets are heavily linked to Tyronn Lue, who currently serves as an assistant coach with the Clippers. Now, Tim, as we all know, in 2016, LeBron forced David Blatt out, or that's what people want to believe. But, I can see why. It's all justified because David Blatt, I don't know if he was a good coach at all, man. And, he was replaced with Tyronn Lue. They won a championship. And, Kyrie Irving, I'm sure, although there's some reports that Kyrie Irving didn't get along with Tyronn Lue, sometimes reports can be inaccurate. And Kyrie Irving's apparently pushing for the Nets to hire Tyronn Lue. Now, on the surface of things, it may not seem like it makes a lot of sense because Tyronn Lue kind of looked like he was a puppet to LeBron James, but in today's day and age, Tim, it's a players' league, and you have to get a coach that can acclimate themselves to star players and kind of take a back seat in big moments and allow the players to just go out there and do the thing instead of being up their ass a lot of times. And now that the Nets have those two superstars, those dynamic personalities, Tyronn Lue might make a lot of sense here because he will defer sometimes. Obviously, he'll need to coach and implement a system, but I think he'll be more willing to embrace, analytics, which to Kenny Atkinson's credit, he embraced analytics a lot, but now Tyronn Lue will embrace that, but also kind of be hands-off at times and let Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant kind of do their things and allow them to play their games to the best of their abilities and ultimately lead Brooklyn to a championship. So Popovich is my pipe dream. Tyronn Lue is a more realistic and seemingly popular choice by Kyrie Irving at the moment, and who knows what Kevin Durant is thinking. There are a plethora of options out there, but those are the two right now that I think stand out to me the most.
Well, and my dispute with Popovich, and I know you said it was a pipe dream, but he strikes me more as to use a football analogy, as a Bill Belichick in the sense of he's going to implement the structure and the game plan that has won him and helped win him, obviously with superstar players like Kawhi Leonard, like Tim Duncan, like Tony Parker, but Manu Ginobili. Yes, exactly. And those guys were super talented guys, but they all bought into his system. So I question whether or not Pop would be interested in coming to. Now, granted, KD is probably and Kyrie are probably, you can make a case, as talented, if not more talented. I know Tim Duncan's an unreal world-beating talent, but the other two are in the discussion at their relative positions. But at the end of the day, I just and I understand that the NBA, like you said, it's a players' league. It's something where players have more power than any other sport, period. And other sports always reference the NBA when there's CBA negotiations going on. The players' side always references, we want to be more like the NBA. And this is why, because you're seeing the influence that superstar players can completely take over what the team wants to do. And that's not necessarily a bad thing if it brings about results. But that's my question, Samir. Is this a boom or bust situation? I have to think it is, where if this is truly the work of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, which it seems like it might be, maybe Sean Marks plays a big role. Obviously, it's his decision to make the firing unless the ownership comes down and does it directly. But it says here that I'm reading Karis LeVert, Joe Harris, and Spencer Dinwiddie were all blindsided by this move. They were of the opinion that there was a lot of rumblings. I read some reports that said that Kenny Atkinson's message had grown stale or it just wasn't reaching the players anymore. These are core players that have been a part of Kenny Atkinson's team, as you have detailed in the past, and they're all of the opinion that, no, that's not how we felt, or at least it seems that's what they're saying to the media. So my question is, what becomes the acceptable standard? We all know Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving decided to come to Brooklyn because they're chasing not only championships, but to bring about championships back to the New York market. Kyrie from being from Jersey and the Nets connection there, and KD from Virginia and the DC area, and playing against Kyrie growing up, and it's to me, what is it? Obviously a single trophy is a standard, but it seems like they're trying to duplicate similar, as you mentioned, similar to what LeBron has done in the past, where he's brought in the pieces around him, not only the coaches, but the teammates and the players. He's effectively the judge, jury, executioner, the GM, the coach. He does everything. It seems like that's what Kyrie and KD are doing. So what to you is an acceptable standard in order to make this all pay off?
Well, I mean, the Nets, they cannot be performing this way this season for an acceptable standard to be put in place. I mean, they're getting by with the excuse of Kevin Durant's been out this season. Kyrie Irving's only played 20 games this season. Now he's out for the year. So, there's 28 or I think 29 and 34, 29 and 34 at the current moment, and 7th seed in the Eastern Conference. So, that's very mediocre at best, if not, below average. So, the fact that they're 7th seed without Kyrie and Kevin Durant, though, kind of does speak volumes to the culture that the organization kind of preached over the last few years, started by Kenny Atkinson and Sean Marks. So, right now it's just kind of develop the players, kind of figure out who's going to be a part of the team long term with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. So this season's kind of just a wash. We all know it's not really going to go far. So,
right. Right. Well, I meant more toward looking forward, moving into next year and going forward. What's acceptable as far as...
Of course. I'm just kind of touching up on what's going on right now. But for the future, this can't be happening. I'm expecting 50 to 60 plus wins for this team. No less than 55. I will not accept anything less than 55 wins in the regular season at a top 3 seed. I will not accept any of that, because you have the second best player in the world on your team. Granted, he'll be coming off a major injury, but with today's day and age, with today's technology, unless if he's really bothered by it, I expect Kevin Durant to come back to at least 95% of what he was. And 95% of Kevin Durant is still the second best player in the NBA by far, and could even overtake LeBron James, given LeBron is going to be 36 in December of this year. So I fully expect Kevin Durant to come back healthy. Kyrie Irving, get your injuries out of the way right now, man. No more impingements. I don't want to hear you getting impingements or this or that, getting knocked around. You gotta play smart, take it to the rack a little bit less, develop a better jump shot, anything to do that can keep you out of harm's way, because we need you. We need both of them for at least 60 to 70 regular season games. Now, that's just regular season. I'm going off on a little tangent there. I'm sorry. I'm just
That's okay. I like it. I like it.
I've been through a lot as a Nets fan. I've been through so much shit, and for them to get rid of Kenny Atkinson right now, get rid of D'Lo, who we thought D'Angelo Russell, for those who don't really follow basketball, but for them to get rid of D'Lo and Kenny Atkinson right now and move away from something special that they were building last season, this better pay off. Like, you better know what you're doing, because we fell in love with that team. We fell in love with Jared Dudley, Damari Carroll, and Ed Davis being our veterans, and D'Angelo Russell being a rising superstar for the team with Karis LeVert. We fell in love with that. Jarrett Allen as well. So if you're bringing in these two superstars with another culture change, we better see results. We better see 55 to 60 win seasons and at least one championship. As a Nets fan, I want to see one championship from you guys. Otherwise, it's a bust. It's an absolute bust. No other way of putting it. Bust.
Well, and what's funny is I saw you and our good buddy Matt Drexler going back and forth, and you and Drex are both huge Nets fans, and Drex pretty fired up about this as well. And it to me, it kind of reminds me to a lesser extent of the Yankees when they switched from Girardi. And if I recall, you and I were both kind of iffy about that, not thrilled about it. And Aaron Boone came in, and Aaron Boone was seen maybe not as a Tyrone Lue type, but similarly a younger, kind of more relatable, player-friendly guy, where Girardi was a seasoned veteran as both an assistant manager, a player who had won rings. It reminds me of that because it has the tie-in to New York, and the Yankees, of course, haven't won under Aaron Boone yet, and we can talk about all we want the number of reasons now that have come out of baseball over the last 3 months or so with the Astros, and lots of things that might have stymied Boone from winning one already with the Yankees, but it certainly seems that he has them in the right direction. It seemed as though Kenny Atkinson, I know this year was not ideal, but it seemed as though Kenny Atkinson had the Nets going in the right motion. You said it last year. Nets fans fell in love with the team. They finished in the playoffs. They went to the playoffs, and they had a 42-40 record. This was a team that took a huge step. And to write this season off, to me, it speaks of a little dysfunction. And I think, like we've talked about, the talent of KD and Kyrie can offset this. But I am very curious, because you mentioned it. Kyrie, Kyrie and Tyrone Lue might not have the best of reputations. And I wonder if KD is kind of saying, hey, listen, Kyrie, this is a guy I know we can win with. Believe me, listen to me, we'll make this work. And, Samir, I know we've talked about this in the past, but Kyrie, to me, continues to be a very polarizing figure. We know he's super talented. We know maybe some of the criticism against him in Boston was a little bit misdirected, and also that, it's well known that he didn't really want to be there to begin with. But there is this now indisputable consistency in his career where there's been changes, there's been turnover, not necessarily always in the coaching position, but it does seem to become now it's a me or him type of situation. Now, obviously, Kyrie wasn't in danger of being traded or cut or walking in free agency because he's under contract. But, to me, like, I will agree with you in that I believe that if it's Kyrie and KD together that are dictating this, which I don't think either of us disagree with, I think it's you have to win. You have to win, not only for the talent, but there is depth on that roster. And it's just it's kind of put up or shut up. If you believe that you can pick a coach out, regardless of whether or not you're a player or a general manager, and you fire a coach who certainly didn't, again, wasn't having the best of seasons this year, and like you said, there's a lot of circumstances that contribute to that, but still has been a positive influence on this team. I know the win-loss record isn't great because of the first two years with the Nets where he was building them up from the ashes, so you knew it wasn't going to be great, but there's been steady progress. I just think they have no choice now. They've put themselves in the position to win or bust. That is, and maybe that's what they want. Maybe that's what KD and Kyrie want. They know there's no possible excuse now for losing. And maybe that's how they function best. There are athletes that do. But for me, I don't love this. And my last question for you, Samir, is, and I know we've kind of gone about it, and I know as a Nets fan that you're going to move forward believing that, hey, let's see what happens. Do you think at this moment, and I know it'll be a wait and see, but do you think this was a move that will pay off? Is this a good move? Is this, better way to put it, is this the right move?
It absolutely is the right move. Kenny Atkinson, his time in Brooklyn has gone stale. Kenny Atkinson is a guy that comes in with his own terms and only his own terms. I mean, he has a dogged approach to coaching the game. He'll study film for hours and, work tirelessly and work his players hard and, expect nothing but the best from his players. But his time has grown stale. His voice wasn't being heard as loud as it once was with a team that was still developing and a team that, had players coming from the G League or second-round picks or guys that needed a second chance, such as D'Angelo Russell, guys that were trying to find their niche in the NBA and kind of had to listen to Kenny Atkinson's direction. And it worked. It helped set a culture in Brooklyn where it's blue-collar and, it's progressing into what the NBA is becoming today. But like I said, Kenny Atkinson, he wasn't too thrilled about coaching Kyrie and Kevin Durant. And apparently Kyrie Irving kind of grew tired of Kenny Atkinson early on in his, early on this season, which is his Brooklyn tenure. So having said that, it just grew stale. Kenny Atkinson knew it. Kenny Atkinson's very humble in that respect, where he knew that it was just time to move on, and it wasn't an easy decision for Sean Marks to make. It wasn't easy whatsoever. So if two sides are just kind of at an impasse, it's time to just cut the bait, especially when an organization is progressing into a completely different era of their just championship run. Because I could say this entire phase started in 2016 when they hired Kenny Atkinson. He came in and he did his job, and he came in and really just did a great job of making something out of nothing. Irina Pavlova, very connected to the Brooklyn Nets organization. Her account is on private on Twitter, but got good buddy here, Doug Burek. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Got a good friend on Twitter, though. Just from being Nets fans, we follow each other. She likened it to a professional organization, like everyday, like Wall Street type of environment. If you think of a startup, the founder who gets it off the ground is usually replaced by a professional CEO. And that's true in a lot of cases. You have a project manager that takes on a project with their skill sets and their strengths in order to let that phase of the process, grow. And that's what the Nets hired Kenny Atkinson for, to develop talent that needs, just needs to find their niche in the NBA. And that's what he did. He was able to take D'Angelo Russell, Spencer Dinwiddie, Joe Harris. Spencer Dinwiddie and Joe Harris and Karis LeVert in a lot of respects. They were kind of second thoughts, late first round picks, early second round picks, and guys that were having trouble finding any niche in this league. And he was, he gave them an opportunity to come in and be a part of the team. And now today you see Joe Harris is one of the better 3-point shooters in the NBA, and Spencer Dinwiddie is a borderline all-star at best. And Spencer Dinwiddie was one slip up away from just never seeing any NBA action ever again. And Karis LeVert too. He could have easily gone to the second round of that draft if the Nets didn't see his talent at the 20th pick in 2016. So he could have been washed away with the team not recognizing his talent. So Kenny Atkinson was good at finding talent and developing it. And as I digress there, now it comes to the point where this Nets organization is ready to win a championship. And I don't think Kenny Atkinson has that mindset to mesh with big stars like Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. He likes to kind of be in charge and kind of implement his own regime and his own system of player development. And, just kind of like he likes to coach. He doesn't like to defer to anybody. That's just who he is. He's a fiery guy. And he'll go after refs. He'll go after players on the sidelines. And, he'll let you have it. He's a Long Island guy. He's a blue collar guy. I respect the living hell out of all that. I do. And now I think this will pay off, Tim, to get back to your question. I digress a little bit. I'm sorry. I just have so much on this topic that I just need to get out there. And I do think it's going to pay off because, they need to find a coach that will cater better to the egos of Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Not to say that their egos are a bad thing, but when you're a superstar, you're gonna, have some sort of ego where things need to get managed. So I think they're just gonna work hard, diligently with Sean Marks. Sean Marks is a mastermind. He'll find the right guy. They're all gonna be in talks, and they're all gonna come to an agreement on who should be the next guy to lead this process. So I think it will pay off.
I think to your point, Samir, I'm not discounting that or disbelieving that. I just think they have to hire the right person because now they're transitioning from everything that you've said and from what it seems like they're now transitioning from developing players to managing their superstar players in the best way that will allow for not only them to play their best game, but to handle what is a very talented, deep roster. And that brings about its own complications, as we've seen for other teams in the past. But generally speaking, talent wins out, especially in the NBA, when it's 5 guys on the floor at a time. And I am not saying that this is a bad move, but I just, I feel for Kenny Atkinson because I understand that he's his own man, he's his own coach, he's not going to be very compromising. Fine. And in the NBA, you do have to become that at certain points, or if you're Greg Popovich and you're kind of living in best of both worlds, it makes it work. And I know I'm generalizing a little too much, but my thought is this: I think it'll pay off if they get the right person in, and if that's Tyronn Lue, that's Tyronn Lue. But my curiosity is going to be with who they hire, who they bring in. I'm assuming it'll be an external hire. I don't think it doesn't sound like they're going to promote from within, even if Vaughn does well here down the stretch. It sounds like this is blank slate for KD, Kyrie, and Samir. You and I are both New Yorkers. We know what that town, as a Brooklyn Nets fan, and as a Yankees fan, what the expectations are now for the Nets, and they cannot afford to mess this up. I'll be very curious to see where Kenny Atkinson lands because I'm sure there's going to be people that are interested. Certainly. I think this is a bit of if it is, and it sounds like you're right in the sense that this is a mutual parting of the ways and that Atkinson wants to do his own thing, not manage superstars. But it does seem kind of an unceremonious way to say thank you to a guy who's helped put the Nets in the right direction. So I'll leave it open to you, Samir, for final thought here. But that's my wrap on it. I know you are far better educated on this in terms of basketball and the dynamics of basketball. But I would say good luck to Kenny Atkinson, good luck to the Nets, and whoever they bring in, they better be ready because there's no margin for error now.
Absolutely no margin for error indeed. You got to coach this team to 55 to 60 wins, and you got to lead them to the Eastern Conference finals and beat Milwaukee in the Eastern Conference Finals and to the finals. So no margin of error whatsoever, especially in a hostile environment such as New York City. But for my thoughts on Kenny Atkinson, now more focusing on him and some of the positives that he brought to this organization. He came in very quietly in April of 2016. I remember I got an alert to my phone. Nets hire Kenny Atkinson as head coach. I'm like, who is this guy? Did a little research on him. And one of the first things I saw is that he was behind the whole insanity phase that took over in early 2012, much of February of 2012. And, I read that he was working behind the scenes with Jeremy Lin and kind of prepared him for that moment to break out. And sure enough, Jeremy Lin broke out, took the world by storm, and carved out a niche for himself in the NBA. And then did further research how he's worked on Al Horford, his 3-point shooting. And, before you knew it, Al Horford became a knockdown 3-point shooter after not making that many earlier in his career. Then I started to see the same success come in Brooklyn. Brook Lopez, much, very well known for, being a great post scorer, his hook shots, his mid-range jumpers, and dunking abilities, made him the perfect, not modern day center, sorry, center that would play in the 90s and the 2000s, offensive minded and could do everything right, but just not really shoot the 3-point shot. Kenny Atkinson comes in. Brook Lopez becomes primarily a 3-point shooter, and every time I watch Brook Lopez now, at that point in time, he was just a 3-point shooter. You didn't really see him in the mid-range a lot of times, which I think there were some flaws in terms of how he approached the game. Kenny Atkinson approached the game at times. He wasn't very he didn't embrace the mid-range shot as much as he should have. I think you still need to have some sort of mid-range game in your offense, but that's besides the point. Mm-hmm. So just seeing the work he's done with Brook Lopez and other big men throughout their careers and 3-point shooting, and Brook Lopez has gone on to now be a part of the Milwaukee Bucks and be perfect fit in that system as a 3-and-D guy. He'll get his offense with floor spacing, 3-point shooting, then inside he'll get some blocks because he just kind of hides behind the wall of defense that the Bucks have. But overall, Kenny Atkinson literally took this team from the ground up. He brought in no-name guys like Joe Harris, Spencer Dinwiddie, and helped them carve out a niche for where they are today. Like I said, like they'll say, and Karis LeVert here, all three of them would not be where they are today without Kenny Atkinson, and the Brooklyn Nets would not be where they are today without Kenny Atkinson. Ever since he took over the team, the Nets have been in the top 10 in the NBA and 3-point makes, despite not having the most glamorous of records in comparison to a lot of the teams that they're ranked with, like the Houston Rockets and the Golden State Warriors. But he implemented a system that he knew was going to be sustainable for long-term success in this NBA, and that's getting a lot of your offense from behind the arc. And you just kind of had a sense that once he gets the right players, like Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, and, I guess just having actual NBA players in his system, that this team was just going to take off. And, the Nets just made the right moves in conjunction with Marks and Atkinson. They worked together to bring in vets like Jared Dudley, DeMarre Carroll, Ed Davis. They helped revitalize DeMarre Carroll's career. DeMarre Carroll came over from Toronto as a high-priced and, kind of washed-up asset. Came in, became a 3-and-D guy, found his niche again. So Kenny Atkinson has also been good about bringing in guys that embrace his system and helping them revitalize their career and then perhaps move on elsewhere. So overall, Kenny Atkinson brought in that blue-collar approach and a way of getting talent out of guys who other teams couldn't seem to get the talent out of. Even today, you see Chris Chiozza. He's starting to find his niche in the Brooklyn Nets system. Unfortunately, Kenny Atkinson will no longer be there to see his talent further develop, but it just speaks volumes to how he's able to find these guys out of the G League or free agency and just help them develop and find a niche. I know I keep repeating myself when
No, you're
but just overall, and I'm gonna say this flat
Mhm.
out: the Nets would not be where they are today without Kenny Atkinson. They wouldn't have turned their their fortunes around so quickly. 2015 was the last time they made the playoffs until 2019. It could
Right.
have very well been like 2021 or 22 when they finally had their picks. But he and Sean Marks made the right moves in getting D'Angelo Russell, drafting Karis LeVert, signing Spencer Dinwiddie, and drafting Jarrett Allen and getting in the right vets, as I mentioned before, kind of building that culture up, not quitting during games, coming from behind against big teams and giving teams a scare and forcing the other teams to play hard and tired down the stretch because the Nets just wouldn't quit. That's just the mindset he brought to the team. You knew that the Nets, if they were down by 20, that could be erased in a matter of half a quarter because that team just went out there, executed to the best of their ability with their ball movement, selfless play, getting shots from behind the 3-point line. You know, he just did a masterful job of turning that organization around. And without Kenny Atkinson's contributions to Brooklyn, we wouldn't be talking about Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant teaming up at the Barclays Center every night now and talking about the next phase of this Brooklyn Nets organization because he preached culture and what it's all about. And unfortunately, that culture is no longer be put in place. But every organization has to develop, move on from previous phases, and I just hope that the Nets will be able to do that with their new personnel. And I wish Kenny Atkinson nothing but the best moving forward. I know there's going to be plenty of teams out there. He's going to have a job next season. Don't
Yeah.
don't
Oh
don't,
yeah.
don't think otherwise for 1 second. There's going to be a plethora of teams out there. The Knicks, someone's available. Long Island guy, New York, blue collar. That's what New Yorkers are about. Young players that need development. RJ Barrett can use him. Kevin Knox can use him.
Mhm.
Um, and Chicago Bulls, perhaps the San Antonio Spurs might even hire him if Pop decides to move on. Hopefully to Brooklyn. So he's going to have options overall, and I just have so much to say about Kenny, but not all of it's there. As new details emerge, maybe I'll get them out there. But to sum it all up, this was a very necessary part of the Brooklyn Nets transition from being the laughing stock, giving up all their first round picks for Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, and transitioning it to getting Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. So, thank you, Kenny Atkinson, for what you've done. You're a great human being, great coach, and even if you're coaching the Knicks, I wish you nothing but the best, except when you play us.
Well said, Samir. And as always, we'll wait with bated breath to see where the Nets go. Obviously, there's still this season to play out and potentially at least a first round appearance. Maybe if they can tread water at in that seventh spot. I know the East, once you get further down, isn't exactly the most loaded, but certainly. It'll be very interesting to see how next year goes, who comes in, who goes, or who stays, who goes, and where Kenny Atkinson lands. It'll be very interesting. I'd like to see him over with the Knicks and see if there's that crosstown rivalry gets elevated. But in any case, Samir, I think that's a good wrap on it, and we will see when we talk again. I have a feeling we'll be talking some more basketball. So,
For sure.
yes,
MVP race, the heating up, playoffs, and
absolutely.
but I guess this is my favorite Kenny Atkinson moment.
Mm-hmm.
Probably my absolute favorite. This was when the Nets weren't even good. We were playing Minnesota in Minnesota. Kenny Atkinson just lost his shit on the ref. He had to be held back by assistant coaches and players because I thought he was gonna knock that ref out, and I was like honest. I was like, yeah. He was just he wasn't he wasn't gonna back down. He had that blue collar approach right inside of him, man. He's from Long Island, New Yorker. He had that all in him. Like, I'm gonna back my players. If you make a bad call, I'm gonna come out and get you. Like, he was fearless, man. I love that about him. He kept it real, and any team's going to benefit from having him. Any team that needs progress in their organizational development, which Chicago and New York could very well use. So, you're going to love him, whoever gets him.
Well said, Samir. Well, all of that and more, in future episodes to come here on Shooting the Breeze. We'll see you next time.